Developing right now on Morning News Now, a trail of clues in the search for a killer. This morning, we're getting a clearer look at a person of interest in this week's deadly ambush shooting of insurance executive Brian Thompson. Police tracing the killer's movements back to a New York City hostel where he may have stayed and a Starbucks where investigators say he left behind critical evidence. But at the crime scene, bullet shell casings may hint at a motive. We're going to bring you the latest. Also this morning, an uphill battle for President-elect Trump's cabinet picks. Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth working to win Senate votes amid misconduct and drinking allegations.
What did President-elect Trump tell you, Mr. Hegseth?
He's behind us all the way. Spoke to him this morning.
Did you get the votes yet confirmed?
That's why we're here to meet with the senators. It's been a wonderful process. Plus, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy laying out their vision for the new Department of Government Efficiency. We're going to take you to Washington for the latest on the Trump transition. Plus, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Parts of the East Coast waking up to wintry weather with more flurries in the forecast throughout the weekend. While out west, Northern California rocked by a powerful 7.0 magnitude earthquake. We're tracking it all. And open for work. More than half of working Americans are looking to change jobs. That's the highest level in a decade. We're going to break down what's behind the trend, and we'll share some tips on standing out in a competitive job market.
All right, good morning. I'm Christine Romas in for Savannah today.
Good to have you with us on a Friday. I'm Joe Fryer. We're going to begin with the manhunt for the gunman who shot and killed the CEO of UnitedHealthcare. New York City police released these photos of someone they are calling a person of interest in connection to the death of Brian Thompson.
Meanwhile, police are also looking into whether the gunman paid in cash and used a fake ID to rent a room at this hostel on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. That's according to 2 law enforcement officials briefed on this investigation. And 3 senior law enforcement officials tell NBC News they believe the shooter may have traveled to New York from Atlanta last month by bus. Investigators say the gunman bought a water bottle and 2 protein bars from a nearby Starbucks before that shooting, but then discarded those items. For more, we're joined by NBC News correspondent Stephen Romo in New York. And Stephen, start with those new images of the person of interest. What do we know about them, and what other clues is the NYPD looking at?
Yeah, Joe, Christine, those really are the biggest developments of the case that we heard yesterday. Police searching that hostel on the Upper West Side, interviewing people and getting those images from video surveillance and releasing them where we can see this person of interest's full face, much different than the photos of a person they described as a suspect that they released, showing him masked up at a Starbucks they released those on Wednesday. Investigators also looking at the physical evidence which they obtained from this area outside the Hilton in Midtown Manhattan, those shell casings with writing on them, along with the water bottle and protein bars you mentioned from this area. We know police are also going to private businesses and getting video clips or trying to get video clips of this person of interest, the suspect. And you mentioned the Greyhound bus that came from Atlanta. That's one of the other things that officers are now looking at, something that could provide a name. Now, more than 48 hours since this shooting happened, so no name of a potential shooter has been released.
Yeah, Stephen, I want to ask you more about something you just mentioned, how we're learning more about where the suspect may have traveled from. What else can you tell us, and how are investigators saying that could work into the investigation?
Yeah, Joe, potentially that Greyhound bus that investigators are saying came from Atlanta. There were, of course, stops along the route from a route that long, bringing them up to the northeast. So it's not clear exactly if investigators believe this shooter may have come from Atlanta or one of those stops. But that passenger manifest list could obviously have a name on it, something that investigators are definitely looking into. But the timeline that we get from that information shows that the shooter may have shown up to 10 days before the shooting actually happened. And in a city the size of New York, with all of the cameras, that could leave an even larger digital footprint as well, something that investigators could use to hopefully identify that gunman.
Hey, Stephen, in the aftermath of this murder, we have seen a lot of support from people expressing sympathy for the shooter and anger at insurance companies. What's going on there?
Yeah, it's troubling to see that almost immediately after the shooting, there were memes that were being posted, but there's just a lot of outrage against the industry altogether for denied claims and all the trouble that, people have with the health insurance industry. And for some reason, people have decided to take it out or to use this as to show their frustration in this. Of course, you have to keep in mind that this Brian Thompson had children, had a family. Of course, difficult to imagine them looking at those memes that are being posted, but it is a sign of the frustration of the industry writ large, guys.
All right. Stephen Romo. Stephen, thank you so much. This morning, 2 kindergartners are in critical but stable condition in California after a gunman opened fire at their school. Police say they think the suspected shooter targeted the school over its religious affiliation. They also say he had a history of mental illness. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch has the latest on that investigation.
In Northern California, the Butte County Sheriff now identified the 2 kindergarteners shot at their school Wednesday as 5-year-old Elias Wolford and 6-year-old Roman Mendez. Both remain in critical condition.
The fact that they are currently still with us, I think, is a miracle.
The sheriff also identified the suspect as 56-year-old Glenn Liddon, found dead after allegedly turning a gun on himself.
He has a lengthy criminal history and history of mental health issues.
Shots fired, 27 Cox Lane between Highway 70 and Simpson Road.
According to the sheriff, Liddon met with the Feather River Adventist school principal about enrolling his grandson, but used an alias.
Did not have a grandson, so it appears to us that that story was a ruse to set up an appointment so that he could gain access to the campus.
The sheriff sharing these photos from after that meeting as the attack unfolded.
I looked back and I saw a shadow with a gun, so I told most people to run even faster.
The sheriff says Liddon attended a different Seventh-day Adventist school himself. Writings believed to be Liddon's that are part of the investigation discuss the religious group and Middle East issues.
There were writings that we believe he authored, and we were able to obtain those writings.
Jesse Kirsch, NBC News.
All right, now to the latest on the Trump transition. The president-elect's defense secretary pick, Pete Hegseth, is keeping his hat in the ring despite failing to secure support from at least a handful of Republican senators. That's according to a Trump transition official who spoke with NBC News. Hegseth has now finished meeting with lawmakers on Capitol Hill, but plans to return next week. Over the past few days, he defended himself against allegations of excessive drinking, as well as a sexual assault claim, which he says was consensual. No charges were filed in that incident, which was investigated by police, and Hegseth later paid his accuser an undisclosed sum. Now, some Republicans, like Iowa Senator Joni Ernst, a sexual violence survivor, say they remain undecided.
I think for a number of our senators, they want to make sure that any allegations have been cleared, and that's why we have to have a very thorough vetting process.
All this as Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence, is now facing pushback from former members of the agency she has been tapped to lead. For more on all of this, let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Ali Rafa. Ali, let's start with Pete Hegseth. When President-elect Trump's Attorney General pick Matt Gaetz was under scrutiny for his behavior, Mr. Trump himself was making phone calls to senators on his behalf. Now, this time around, are we seeing any of that same kind of effort for Hegseth from Mar-a-Lago? And where is he now in this process?
Yeah, Christine, good morning. Well, Hegseth held a whole other round of meetings with these senators yesterday as he tries to clear his path towards a Senate confirmation. But as far as the direct outreach from Trump to these Republican senators, we are not seeing the same sort of communication that we were seeing when Matt Gaetz was in the running for Attorney General. This is really an effort being led by Hegseth himself, as well as members of his family. He's appeared with his wife in several of these meetings with senators, and his mother has even been on Fox News defending this pick. And Hegseth, as you mentioned, says he plans to be back on the Hill next week to meet with those still skeptical Republican senators. But it's important to remember here that there's still a very long road ahead. Several of these Republican senators are even caveating this by saying exactly that. They're expressing this openness to meeting with Hegseth, saying that they're having constructive and positive conversation with him, but none of them are coming out and saying that they are an absolute 100% yes on Hegseth yet. They're saying that still so much has to happen before he could be confirmed by the Senate. Of course, that all-important Senate Armed Services Committee hearing where an FBI background check will have to be completed before that. And Hegseth's lawyer is saying that his team has received those documents to be able to go forward with that background check. And he says that Hegseth is expected to complete those over the weekend, Christine.
Let's talk about the pick for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Who are the people who are speaking out against her nomination, and what concerns are they raising?
Yeah, NBC has obtained a letter signed by nearly 100 former national security officials in which they criticize President-elect Trump's pick of Tulsi Gabbard to lead the country's intelligence community. And these officials urge the Senate to, quote, carefully evaluate whether Gabbard is equipped for this position. And they call for closed-door Senate confirmation hearings to see whether there's any government information on the former Hawaii Congresswoman. And in this letter, they say, quote, several of Ms. Gabbard's past actions call into question her ability to deliver unbiased intelligence briefings to the president, Congress, and to the entire national security apparatus. And they bring up a specific example of her meetings in 2017, the surprise meeting that she had with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. And they say that after that, she aligned herself with Syrian as well as Russian officials. Now, a Tulsi Gabbard spokesperson speaking through the Trump transition team is responding to this in a statement saying, in part, quote, these intel officials continue to use classification as a partisan weapon to smear and imply things about their political enemy without putting the facts out, Christine.
And the president-elect is really continuing to announce names for additional leadership positions at all the various federal agencies. What are some of the new names that stand out to you?
Yeah, he unveiled several more picks overnight, including his choice to lead Customs and Border Patrol, obviously an agency that's going to carry out his mission and his goals for the U.S.-Mexico border as well as the U.S.-Canada border. And he picked Rodney Scott, a former chief of the U.S. Border Patrol who served under both the Trump and Biden administrations. He also overnight announced that he was going to pick former Georgia Senator David Perdue to be U.S. ambassador to China. And Perdue has spent most of his 40-year-long corporate career before he was a senator in China, also doing business in other parts of Asia as well. So Trump definitely leaning on him to lead the relations between the two largest economies in the world, the U.S. and China, Christine.
All right, Ali Rafa, thank you so much, Ali. Today, President-elect Trump will sit down for an exclusive interview with NBC News Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker. It is his first network interview since winning the 2024 election. We will be releasing highlights throughout the weekend, and you can watch the full interview on Meet the Press Sunday morning on NBC News.
A win on Capitol Hill for former Congressman and one-time Attorney General hopeful Matt Gaetz. House lawmakers voted Thursday against releasing an ethics committee report on a years-long investigation into the Florida Republican. Gaetz has been dogged by allegations he engaged in illicit drug use and sexual misconduct with a 17-year-old girl. He has denied those allegations. For more, let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles. Ryan, good morning. So just walk us through these latest developments, this vote on not releasing the report.
Yeah, what happened yesterday, Joe, was that the two different Democratic congressmen put what are called privileged resolutions on the floor that would force the House Ethics Committee to release that report. But Republicans effectively blocked that from taking place by just referring the report and the release of the report back to the Ethics Committee. And the Ethics Committee did meet yesterday. They did not resolve the future of this ethics report, whether or not it would ever be released. They said that they're just going to continue that conversation. So as it stands right now, that ethics report is not expected to see the light of day, especially because Matt Gaetz is no longer a congressman or not someone being considered for a position in the Trump administration, Joe.
So, Ryan, is there a way down the road it could end up being released? I mean, what's next?
I think it's very unlikely at this point. The only way that this dynamic could possibly change is if Donald Trump did decide to appoint Matt Gaetz to another position in his administration, even one that perhaps did not require Senate confirmation. Then you could make an argument that the report should be released so that the president is aware of this information before he appoints him to that post. But there does not really seem to be a lot of energy amongst House Republicans to take on that political battle, especially because Gaetz is someone who remains close to Trump, even though he is no longer his pick for Attorney General. So as it stands right now, we likely won't see this report anytime soon. The only other dynamic that could change is in 2 years, when we have another election. If Democrats take control of the House, perhaps they release the report then. But it's unlikely that far down the road that this will still be a very relevant issue.
Ryan, let's talk about another headline on Capitol Hill on Thursday. The heads of President-elect Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, we're talking about Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, they met with congressional Republicans talking about ways they could slash federal spending. What do we know about those meetings?
Well, we know they were brainstorming sessions, is how they were described to us. They were all behind closed doors. It was basically just Ramaswamy and Musk standing in front of a group of both Republican senators and House members, and them just throwing out ideas and talking about ways that they could reform government and cut spending. This duo of Ramaswamy and Elon Musk have pledged to slash government spending in a major way. Musk said during the campaign that he sees as many as $2 trillion worth of cuts to the federal budget. Well, they're never going to be able to do that without the support of Congress. And this was their first step in trying to win members of Congress over. They certainly have enough support amongst Republicans to at least do some significant cuts to the federal budget. The issue will be that any of that will require bipartisan support, and Democrats have made it clear they're not going to touch any of the major entitlement programs like Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. Joe.
All right. Ryan Nobles. Ryan, thank you so much.
All right, California Governor Gavin Newsom has issued a state of emergency after a major earthquake hit off the coast Thursday. This surveillance camera video showing the violent shaking from the magnitude 7.0 quake. It hit yesterday morning right up near the Oregon border. It prompted a temporary tsunami warning as officials warned people to stay away from the beach and to seek higher ground. Now, this morning, the cleanup continues at places like this hotel in Ferndale, where the shaking sent bottles, look at that, flying from behind the bar.
On the other side of the country, another powerful winter storm is bringing more lake-effect snow with strong winds sweeping across the Northeast. The heavy snow, more than 5 feet deep in some places, is creating concerns that roofs could start collapsing, and it's prompting folks to start shoveling. The National Weather Service says western Pennsylvania could get up to 18 more inches of snow. Blizzard warnings remain in effect through Saturday.
This morning, millions are once again under winter alerts from the Great Lakes to the Northeast.
Meteorologist Angie Lastman's tracking the wintry weather for us. Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. It is Friday, but that lake effect snow is ongoing. We've been dealing with this on and off across this region for about a week now, and we've got more snow on the way for folks across the Great Lakes. That wind, it's just, again, unrelenting. It's going to be cold wind coming across those warm lakes. And as you know, over the past couple of weeks, we've seen that kind of ramp up the snow downwind, and that's exactly where those winter alerts currently stand. So places like Erie, stretching to Lock Haven, we've got Oswego, Watertown, all included in those winter alerts this morning. It's a lot less expansive than it has been over the past 24 hours. So we've seen some of those winter alerts expire, but a lot of those downwind of the lakes, those aren't going to change here, at least for the next 24 hours. And you can see why. We've got more snow on the way. Those heavy snow bands are going to set up just east of the lakes, both Erie and Ontario. And we'll see additional snowfall on top of the really kind of ample amounts that we've already received in those areas. On top of that, we've got another system that's going to develop and then work into the Great Lakes here over the next 24 hours. This is a look at tomorrow afternoon and into the evening hours. That's where we'll start to see some of that snow working into parts of upstate New York and interior areas of New England. This is going to bring us some of that steady snow for that region. Also, it'll make it a little bit difficult for some travel across places across the Great Lakes, as well as the Northeast. But notice the snowfall totals aren't quite as impressive the farther you get away from the lakes. Still, folks there, you're going to have to pick up maybe another 6 inches or so in some spots and up to a foot. Places like Watertown and Point South, you could see another good round of snow. Erie as well. Elsewhere, I think 1 inch, 2 inches, maybe 3 inches in some spots. None of that is going to reach closer to the coast where it's a little warmer. Meanwhile, speaking of the opposite of warm, it's chilly for the south. We've got those alerts up for folks across Georgia and Florida, and temperatures are dipping into the teens in Nashville, 20s for Montgomery, 40s for Tallahassee. So we're waking up chillier than normal for this time of year, and that 10 to 15 degree temperature kind of trend below where we should be lasts into this afternoon as well. 55 is all you get in Tallahassee today, low 40s for Raleigh, Washington, D.C. You'll be into the 30s. In Boston, you top out at 32. Now, just when you're getting used to the chilly temperatures, temperatures over the next 2 days across this region. We start to warm up. Some of that more mild air starts to work in from the plains. And guess what, guys? We are back to the 50s in New York City by Monday and Tuesday, 60s for Richmond. I mean, a roller coaster ride when it comes to
But at least for now, you got to go find the scraper. Wherever the scraper is, it's time to get it handy for the rest of the winter.
Especially if you live near the Great Lakes.
Angie Lastman, thank you so much.
Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, TikTok. Today, an appeals court set to decide whether to ban TikTok here in the U.S. We got the latest on that legal battle.
Up first, after the break, a stunning revival after a devastating fire. The iconic Notre Dame Cathedral set to reopen after 5 years. We're going to take you to Paris ahead of tomorrow's reopening. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. France's Notre Dame Cathedral will reopen its doors tomorrow, more than 5 years after a fire destroyed parts of the iconic Paris landmark.
World leaders and famous faces are expected to attend the grand reopening, which is being marked with ceremonies and religious services. NBC News correspondent Jay Gray joins us now from Paris with more on this. Jay, good morning.
Christine, Joe, good morning to you. And what a special weekend this will be. Very sacred for many. Historic for sure. Look, the church, more than 850 years old, ravaged by fire, now coming back to life. Something that many at the time of the blaze feared might never happen. As the world watches in stunned disbelief, flames swallowed the iconic cathedral, the central spire, crumbling into ash. Much of the 860-year-old structure gutted.
It felt painful to watch, but we knew they'd rebuild it. To see it now is amazing.
More than 5.5 years later, thousands are gathering again at Notre Dame, celebrating what many call the rebirth of this historic landmark, brought back to life by nearly 2,000 construction workers, craftsmen, and artists from across the globe.
I am so excited to see it open. Such a big part of our world, Notre Dame.
The official reopening of the cathedral marked by ceremonies and religious services, including Sunday, when dignitaries, heads of state, and celebrities will join the faithful and more than 150 bishops from around the world during an evening mass led by Paris Archbishop Laurent Ulrich.
Brings hope. Paris deserves that.
Before the fire, it was the most visited site in Europe, with 12 to 13 million tourists each year. As Notre Dame reopens now, officials are extending visiting hours until 10 each night, expecting 15 million or more in just the next few months, with as many as 40,000 a day touring the refurbished cathedral. Yeah, and look, the crowd's already gathering here in Paris. The interior restoration is complete, but you can see, Joe and Christine, there's still significant scaffolding outside the building, cranes as well. They're still working on refurbishing the facade, as well as repurposing some of the grounds around the church, and that project could take another year to 3 years, they are saying. But again, the inside is restored. It looks beautiful, and it should be a great weekend here.
Jay, what more can you tell us about the ceremony itself tomorrow? And there'll be some famous faces, people attending.
Yeah, absolutely. Bono is going to be here, so that will be neat. You've got President Biden as well as the First Lady Jill Biden, who are making the trip for that ceremony, and President-elect Donald Trump is going to be in attendance as well. So I think you're going to see a lot of people from across the globe coming to pay their respects to what's been called the construction project of the century here, one that had workers working around the clock in shifts for more than 5 years and living on premises. So it's been quite a special project, and they look forward to celebrating the reopening.
All right, Jay, thank you so much. Nice to see you.
All right, now for what else is making news around the world, starting with the latest on the turmoil over South Korea's leadership.
NBC correspondent Karen Gilchrist joins us now. Good morning, Karen.
Hey there, guys. Good morning. In South Korea, protesters are filling the streets outside the National Assembly in Seoul. And that's after the head of the governing party expressed his support on Friday for suspending the constitutional powers of President Yoon in a significant U-turn that could make Yoon's impeachment more likely. Now, the head of the People Power Party said the president could put Koreans in great danger if he remains in power. And that's coming just days after Yoon imposed martial law, then swiftly reversed the decision. And this just adds support to opposition parties' calls for an impeachment vote this weekend. Elsewhere, the U.S. disagrees with Amnesty International's accusation against Israel of committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza, the State Department said on Thursday. Amnesty were the first major international human rights group to level the claim. They say Israel's 14-month military offensive had caused unprecedented harm in Gaza, including the mass killing and serious injury of civilians, as well as the destruction of critical infrastructure. Israel has rejected the allegations of genocide, maintaining that it is only targeting the Hamas militant group. And in less heavy news, pardon the pun, sumo wrestlers will be descending on London next year for the Grand Sumo Tournament. Next October, the Royal Albert Hall will play host to the 5-day championship, marking just the second time the contest has been held outside of Japan in the sport's 1,500-year history. And that's just another reason for you guys to visit London. Back to you.
Love that it's at Royal Albert Hall, too. Karen, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, investigators say she snuck on a plane from New York to Paris.
That stowaway at the center of a major security investigation makes her first appearance in federal court. We're going to bring you the latest next on Morning News Now.
We're back with the latest on the investigation into how a female stowaway managed to evade security and board a flight from New York to Paris last week. The woman, who is a Russian national, made her first appearance in a New York court yesterday, where she is facing federal charges. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the latest from officials.
Asylum against United States.
She's the stowaway at the center of a major security lapse investigation.
United States broke my leg.
After being escorted by French security back to New York, Svetlana Dali appeared before a federal judge charging documents allege she snuck onto Delta Flight 264 and flew as a stowaway to Paris. The arresting FBI agent says Dali first tried to get through a TSA checkpoint at 8:24 p.m., but without a boarding pass was turned away. 5 minutes later, she tried again and was successful by entering through a special lane for airline employees masked by a large Air Europa flight crew. TSA Chief David Pekoski has reviewed the airport camera footage.
We saw her going into a queue that was really designed for aviation employees. Then we watched her look at the family and then kind of scoot around them while the officer was distracted.
While she did go through a full body scan and bag check at 10:03 p.m., she slipped past Delta agents at gate B38 who were busy helping ticketed passengers board. It wasn't until the plane was in the air that flight attendants discovered Dali. In a statement, Delta says deviation from standard procedures is the root cause of this event. Is it this easy to slip around a TSA checkpoint?
No, it's not that easy, and it rarely happens. This is the only case that we're aware of where somebody slipped past identity verification. So it's not easy, it's rare, but it's serious. And we need to make sure that we put better solutions in place to prevent it from happening again.
Dali's attorney says she's a permanent resident of the U.S., but declined to comment further. The judge has ordered her held until 2 p.m. Friday so she can come up with a bail package. Also, NBC 10, our Philadelphia station's investigative team, has discovered a civil rights lawsuit Dali filed last month, claiming she was trafficked and sold to her ex-husband in Russia, brought here 10 years ago. She also claims she was poisoned in Germany last year and poisoned in Washington, D.C. this year. Back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you.
Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield is doing a 180 on its new proposed anesthesia policy after backlash from doctors, patients, and government leaders. Earlier this week, the insurance company announced it would limit its coverage of anesthesia used in surgeries and procedures. The policy was supposed to go into effect in February for 3 states, Connecticut, New York, and Missouri. NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson reports on the policy reversal.
An about-face from Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, reversing its plan to put time limits on anesthesia care in 3 states. an idea blasted by doctors.
I would love to have a one-on-one talk with the person that thought this was a good idea.
And policymakers.
I think the outpouring of concern that I heard from my constituents was just shock.
Connecticut Comptroller Sean Scanlon runs the largest healthcare plan in the state.
It's not in the best interest of the patient to cut off their coverage for anesthesia in the middle of a surgery just because it's reached some arbitrary time limit.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul called it outrageous. Dr. Gregory Levitin is a vascular birthmark surgeon.
Is this even workable in surgery?
I don't see how this could be applied across the board. Anesthesiologists do not control the amount of time that is spent under anesthesia. A surgeon who is well-trained has a protocol or step-by-step process for performing a surgery. It's not something that's time-dependent, but it's technically dependent.
In announcing the reversal, Anthem cited what it called widespread misinformation and said it never was and never will be the policy of Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield not to pay for medically necessary anesthesia services. Relief for patients, doctors, and policymakers. Ann Thompson, NBC News.
All right, security concerns are higher than usual for the holiday shopping season. More robberies are being reported at all points in the supply chain, from warehouses to doorsteps.
So this morning we wanted to chat with an expert about how you can protect yourself and your purchases with less than 3 weeks to go until Christmas. NBC News law enforcement analyst Evie Pompouris is here to help us out. She's also a former Secret Service special agent. Evie, good to have you with us. So let's start with online shopping. What are the steps folks can take to protect their personal information with so much online shopping happening right now?
Yes, so the primary thing is have a throwaway email, an email that you use just for online shopping. Don't use your other emails that you use for medical purposes, business purposes, or anything like that. In addition to that, the password that you use for online shopping, make sure it does not match anything for your financial institutions, medical institutions, or anything like that. Just know that there's people out there looking and scamming. The other thing you want to make sure you pay attention to is individuals who pretend to be brands. They pretend to be Walmart. They pretend to be Target. They will send you emails that will say, hey, there was a charge made here, or hey, we have a special going on. Don't click on anything. And that's the biggest thing. Do not click. The other thing you're going to see are emails from a FedEx, U.S. Postal Service, UPS saying, hey, your package was supposed to be delivered, but we need your zip code. I actually just got one the other day. Click here so that you can update it. So really watch out for everything. I guess to be safe, click on absolutely nothing. If you get a call from someone, go online, find the phone number for that institution and call them through that. Never call the numbers they provide you. The other thing to pay attention to are your banks, credit card companies. You're going to be getting those. Hey, did you make this purchase? We see this purchase on your account. Again, same thing. If it's from Chase, it says it's from Chase, then go online, get the phone number for Chase, and call Chase.
You can also hover over that email address. Don't click on anything. Just hover over it, and it'll come up, and you can see it's probably not a legitimate address. It's got some guy, John's name in it, right?
ChaseBank347.com.
So just look at that very first, and don't click on anything. You're right.
If you know what, though?
Yeah, go ahead.
A lot of those are actually overseas.
Yeah.
A lot of these, which is a big problem. When we would investigate these, it is so hard to catch these people because they are overseas. And that's why the best thing is to default and absolutely do not click, touch. And the same thing goes for phone calls and emails.
Yeah.
Follow that advice and you will absolutely be safe.
So what if you're shopping?
And one more thing.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. Use credit cards. Do not use your debit cards, everybody. Let the credit card companies be out the money. They're not going to like me telling you this, but they have investigative arms. I have worked with it. They have sophisticated teams. If something happens, your credit card gets scammed, it's their money. They're going to go looking for it. The last thing you want is to use your debit card and then you be looking to get your money back.
Very, very good advice there. If you're shopping in stores, not online, but actually in a physical store, what do people need to do to keep themselves safe?
You are most vulnerable in where you park. Parking garages, these public areas is where you need to be the most careful. This is typically where we see the most robberies or assaults going on. So I always tell people, have one hand free. Put your keys in your hand, maybe hold something in your hand. And by the way, don't be on your phone. You always hear, hey, if you feel unsafe, get on your phone. Absolutely not. You need all your senses and awareness so that you can look around 360 and be able to deal with the situation. So get off your phone. Also, look who's around your vehicle. Are people hanging out? Is somebody sitting in the car nearby? If it feels wrong, don't go. A lot of these plazas or shopping areas, they have security. You can go inside and ask somebody to walk you out, or hang out inside the store until you feel safe to go.
All right. Evie Pompouris, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it. Some good advice there.
Really good advice. All right, coming up, major developments in the battle brewing over TikTok, banning TikTok here in the U.S. When we come back, the decision by a federal judge expected today, and the arguments pitting security concerns against First Amendment rights.
And looking for a new job? Well, you're not alone. Why so many Americans say they're open to work and what you can do to get ahead of the competition. This is Morning News Now. We're back now with the latest in the legal battle over banning TikTok here in the U.S.
Yeah, the fate of the social media giant now laying in the hands of a court of appeals, with a federal judge expected to make a decision today. The government says it will ban TikTok unless its Chinese parent company ByteDance sells it due to concerns over security. TikTok argues this law infringes on its First Amendment rights. NBC News correspondent Danny Ceballos is with us now for more on this. And Danny, good morning. So this ban would take effect January 19th. Tell us exactly what the judge is looking at here and what it would mean for the, 150 million TikTok users in the U.S.
Basically, whether or not this ban is constitutional, because it singles out a particular company, at least this is ByteDance's argument, and infringes upon its First Amendment rights and the First Amendment rights of its users. But in a sense, all of this court procedure may be really just a side issue, because the next administration has a lot of power over how they're going to handle this ban, even if it survives. And no matter what is decided today, there's always a possible appeal to the Supreme Court, and that will certainly happen during the Trump administration. So everything changes once Trump gets into office, really almost irrespective of what the appeals court decides in the coming days.
So the Department of Justice claims keeping access to the app creates a national security threat of, quote, immense depth and scale, but you're balancing that against the First Amendment rights here. Does this just feel like something that's destined to end up before the Supreme Court?
Yes, it does. And a lot of the information, the supposed national security information, is redacted from our view. So the only one really able to do the balancing test is the judge. But really, all of this may be just an exercise in futility for this administration, the Biden administration, because the next administration, to the extent any of this is pending before the Supreme Court, can completely change their position. Because after all, if it's before the Supreme Court, that means on one side is the DOJ seeking to enforce this law as passed. And if the new DOJ says, oh, no, we don't want to enforce it at all, well, that will totally change the contours there at the Supreme Court. And then separately, the law itself as written gives the president considerable authority to decide, number one, whether ByteDance did indeed divest, as it must under the law, or whether or not the president even wants to enforce the law at all.
It's so fascinating because this is a January 19th deadline. January 20th, Trump takes office. He had signed an executive order, right, outlawing TikTok at one point. Do we know where he stands on this today?
So this is really interesting. The answer to where does Trump stand on any issue is don't know, but a lot of his cabinet choices have mixed views on it. Right. I think Marco Rubio is against it. I believe RFK is someone who supports TikTok. So we'll have to see how much they influence him. But you're right, Trump's very mercurial. He may even use it as some kind of overture to China or to ByteDance to get something in return, some quid pro quo, political quid pro quo. Who knows? But he has so much discretion under the law as to enforcement. It's really largely up to him. So I would almost say all of this court procedure that's going on now before the new president comes in is, I don't want to say meaningless, but not as important as you might think.
Which is also interesting because this is one of those rare issues on Capitol Hill that actually had bipartisan support. Democrats and Republicans all agreed on this. So,
all right, Danny Ceballos, nice to see you. Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.
Let's get to what's making financial headlines this morning. Eli Lilly is investing some big bucks into the production of its popular weight loss drug.
Right. CNBC's Savannah Hanau joins us now with that and more money news. Good morning, Savannah.
Hey, Christine. Hey, Joe. Good morning and happy Friday to you. All right. Well, Eli Lilly is spending another $3 billion to expand a factory in Wisconsin as it tries to boost production of its blockbuster diabetes and weight loss drugs, Mounjaro and Zepbound. Those treatments generated more than $4 billion in sales for the company in the third quarter. Eli Lilly plans to start construction on the expansion next year. McDonald's is bringing back a cult favorite menu item, the snack wrap. The fast food giant confirming it will return sometime next year. Now, the snack wrap, which is chicken, lettuce, and cheese wrapped in a tortilla, was introduced in 2006, and McDonald's even hired Heidi Klum for a national ad campaign. But the item was removed from national menus in 2016 and officially discontinued in 2020 when McDonald's simplified the menu. And Warner Brothers Discovery says shooting on its new Harry Potter HBO series will start next summer. The show's producers revealing they auditioned 32,000 kids for the lead roles, and the casting crew is currently looking at 500 to 1,000 tapes per day. The series will feature an entirely new cast from the Harry Potter films, while it's still unknown who will play Harry, Ron, and oh my gosh, I'm going to mess her name up.
Hermione.
Thank you. I'm not a Harry Potter fan, but yes. And so Variety unveiled last month that Mark Rylance is at the top of the wish list to play Hogwarts headmaster Dumbledore. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not a Harry Potter fan.
It's forgiven.
Thank you for helping me. Thank you for helping me.
Is one of my favorite actors.
He's considered one of the greatest actors of modern times.
So I have good taste. Is that
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Listen, I do know a lot of people are very excited about this, so at least there's that. I'm excited for them. I'm excited for all the fans.
So a year from now, you're going to be like all in. You're going to be wearing your Hermione costume. You're going to be. It's gonna be
Probably. I'll give it for my dogs too.
Thank you, Savannah. All right, more money news. The latest monthly jobs report is due out this morning. So let's take a closer look at how Americans view the current job market.
The number of people looking to change jobs right now is higher than it has been in the last 10 years. In fact, a recent Gallup survey showed that more than half of workers are watching for or even actively seeking a new role. LinkedIn career expert Andrew McCaskill is here with us for more on this. So first of all, we got the jobs report today. What are we expecting from that compared with what we've seen the last few months? And just hiring managers in general, what are they seeing and experiencing?
Yeah, I mean, so what we're really expecting for the jobs numbers is we really expect for unemployment to be flat. I mean, we're going to see a bunch of job openings, but in the midst of those job openings, they've got a lot of things going on. One, we've got boomers unretiring and jumping back into the job market. And companies are actually really hesitant about hiring new workers. And you've also got a lot of workers who may be looking around the bow to see what's out there, but many of them are staying in role. And that means that the market is going to be highly competitive. We're going to see a much more competitive job market than we've seen in probably the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's been this crazy situation where you've had way more job openings than people looking for jobs, and that's been great for workers, but now things are normalizing a little bit. If you're trying to put yourself out there and set yourself apart in this highly competitive job market, what do? You
got to ask yourself, are you really ready to jump into this job market? Because it will be a different way of looking at it, right? And you've got to be prepared. Prepare for the job that you really want. Part of that preparation is my resume updated? Is my LinkedIn updated? Have I turned on technology features like open to work and ready to work on LinkedIn? But it's also about looking at my skills. Look at the skills that are required for the jobs that you want and ask yourself, do I have any gaps? December is a great time to start looking at the skills that you have and the work that you want, the industries that you want, and saying, how do I fill in those gaps? Can I take a learning course to really hone in on that? Have I looked at the skills that I have? And can I talk about how they're transferable to these other roles? Because you're going to have to make the case for work in these job interviews that in a way that we've not had to do before, because there's such a higher standard that recruiters are activating against. Hiring managers I want all the skills. There's so much talent out there. I want you to find me someone who has everything that we want. And so you're going to have to make the case for it in a completely different way.
So hiring managers want all the skills, but according to LinkedIn data, managers say the reason they don't move forward with certain candidates is because they don't have the right skills. So for job seekers, is there something they can do to change that, whether it's with their resume or their online profile? What are your tips?
My tips are, one, if you're seeing gaps there, start to figure out how you fill in those gaps and figure out how you can tell a better story about the skills you have and how the skills you have are highly transferable. If the other thing, too, is be even more strategic about what jobs you apply for. Start to really think about what is the probability that I will get this job. The final thing that I'll say about how you prepare for this coming job market is mental preparation.
What do you mean?
You may get a lot of no's. You've got to be ready to be in this market and say, I'm going to go on a bunch of interviews. I'm going to be undaunted by the no's that I get. I'm going to be able to look, if I haven't gotten hired in this first 3 months, then I'm going to go back into the lab and I'm going to pivot. I'm not going to panic. I'm going to look at how I'm telling my professional story. I'm going to start to manage my network better and go after those roles in a different way. Your network will also be a key component in how you get a job in this economy.
That's what I was going to ask. How important is the network? It always is sort of like who knows somebody who knows somebody, and then draw that line.
But here's my point to that, too, is that you're 4 times more likely to get a job at a company where you know someone, but it does not have to be your work bestie. Right. It could be someone that you actually met at a holiday party and you kept in contact with. It could be somebody that you worked with 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. Jump on LinkedIn, find those folks who are working at places where you want to work, and reconnect.
Never burn your bridges.
Never burn your bridges.
Drew McCaskill, thank you so much. Good to have you on.
Thanks.
Coming up, a heartbreaking story with a heartwarming ending.
Yeah, when we come back, how an online community rallied behind one woman who lost her massive book collection in Hurricane Helene. This is Morning News Now. Welcome back. Paint giant Pantone just announced its latest pick for Color of the Year. It's a single shade that helps capture the global mood, and the 2025 crown goes to Mocha Mousse. It's not just one of those regular browns, it's a cool brown. The company says it represents our culture's love for things like desire, personal comfort, and luxury. I feel like I'm reading a commercial here. It's also a reminder of those very demure but very mindful treats we might indulge in to help pick up the day, like chocolates or a cup of coffee. Plus, Mocha Mousse is actually the very first shade of brown to make the cut in Pantone's 25-year-long Color of the Year history.
It kind of looks like the grout I'm trying to clean in my bathroom. So I don't see it as demure or mindful. It's just like my battle.
It looks like mold, is what,
among other things.
Tells us. All right. Finally this hour, the power of social media and the community it can create. One book lover in Florida lost everything she owned in Hurricane Helene. That included her collection of hundreds of books.
Some of those books had even been signed by the authors. So she shared her story with the Book Talk community on TikTok. NBC's Kate Snow has the details of this heartfelt response she received.
25-year-old Brooke Bryant had lived on Florida's Treasure Island her whole life, but she'd never seen anything like Hurricane Helene.
There is significant catastrophic damage to our community.
The storm damaging her home and her treasures.
What kind of a collection of books did you have?
I would say probably 300.
When did it hit you that you'd lost so many things that were valuable to you?
If I'm being honest, it kind of hits every day. I had put so much time in that collection. It was something that I loved having in my room, and that's what I did all the time. I don't really watch TV, so I read all the time.
Brooke documented the damage on TikTok, waterlogged books, some signed. Albums and memorabilia, too. Her posts went viral, pulling at the heartstrings of book lovers on TikTok. #BookTalk.
What were people saying? Those first messages that pour in, what happened?
They were so sweet. Like, oh my God, I don't know what I'd do if that was mine, or I feel so bad, or I'm so sorry. And then very quickly it was, can you post an Amazon wish list? I put maybe like 10 books on it, and within like 15 minutes, they were already purchased.
Brooke says that outpouring of support helped her process the loss.
That's what really made me think about everything. Like how much I had lost, and what really hit home emotionally is just the kindness from people.
TikTok users noticed this book signed by fantasy romance author Carissa Broadbent and tagged her so she would see it.
It was just a no-brainer for me to replace the books. But when I messaged her, I also felt a little foolish, to be honest. I felt like, wow, you've lost so much. And here I am being like, do you want a book? It felt so trivial.
I'll bet it wasn't trivial to Brooke.
No, not at all.
It's such a small thing to be able to help restore a little bit of that human aspect of our lives, beyond food and shelter, like the things that really brought us joy and are the most meaningful things.
What do you think it is about books, Carissa, that sometimes becomes so important to us?
I think it's a way of kind of peering into the void and seeing that even in situations that are really traumatic and terrible, there is always this kind of emotional human element that still manages to shine through.
For Brooke, it's the goodwill of strangers that was shining bright.
The kindness really just was outstanding, and not even people who sent me things, but people who wrote a nice message, people wishing me well, or saying like if there's anything that I could do to help. It meant a lot, and I am extremely grateful.
Kate Snow, NBC News.
That is so sweet.
I love it. The power of the written word and the power of a human connection in a tragedy. That's nice.
Exactly. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
The news continues right now.
Good Friday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Christine Romans in for Savannah today. Right now on Morning News Now, day 3 of that massive manhunt here in New York for the gunman who police say targeted the CEO of UnitedHealthcare. What we're now learning about the days and hours leading up to this brazen killing right in the middle of Manhattan. Mother Nature's winter chill is walloping the Great Lakes in New England this morning, bringing icy cold temps and even blizzard-like conditions to some. Meanwhile, out west, scary scenes in Northern California after a massive offshore earthquake triggered a tsunami warning. The cleanup effort's now underway, and your full weekend forecast from our own Angie Lassman in just a moment. In Washington, President-elect Donald Trump's Pentagon pick, Pete Hegseth, vowing to keep fighting for his post after a week of meetings with top lawmakers that have been overshadowed by a slew of controversial allegations made against the Fox News host. It comes as billionaires Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy make their debut on Capitol Hill, stumping for federal spending cuts. And an explosive back and forth hits headlines over the Secret Service's response to those 2 assassination attempts against the former president. We are covering it all. And you could call it the end of an era. Taylor Swift preparing to take one final bow, closing out her blockbuster concert tour in Vancouver this weekend. We'll take you there later in this hour. We begin with the latest on that massive manhunt in New York City, and now entering its 3rd day. This morning, we're learning more details about the suspect police say targeted the CEO of UnitedHealthcare. 3 law enforcement officials familiar with the case tell NBC News they believe the shooter may have traveled to New York from Atlanta last month by bus.
Police also released these new surveillance images of someone they are calling a person of interest in connection to the case. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock is in Midtown Manhattan with the latest.
We now have an entirely different timeline for the suspect's activity, as according to multiple law enforcement officials, they believe he took a Greyhound bus from Atlanta to New York City, arriving 10 days before the shooting here in Midtown Manhattan. That is 10 days of potentially planning and staging. According to an eyewitness, at one point he even shared a room with total strangers, as police right now are combing cameras across Manhattan, trying to piece together a fuller picture as the manhunt enters its 3rd day. This morning, new camera angles and critical images are emerging that appear to show the suspected gunman sought by an army of law enforcement for the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. The person of interest arrived in New York 10 days before the murder. Police are investigating whether he paid cash and used a fake ID to rent a room at an Upper West Side hostel, according to 2 law enforcement officials. Authorities say these clear photos are of a person of interest taken at the hostel, where the man had a flirtatious interaction with a woman working at the desk, according to a law enforcement official familiar with the matter.
Got a male, unknown race, black mask, cream-colored jacket, black gloves, about 5'10".
There's also a wave of new videos tracking a man who may be the suspect around New York City. From this shot of someone with that distinctive gray backpack leaving a Midtown subway station at 6:15 a.m., to this footage of what looks like the same person bending over near a pile of trash near the site of the shooting. And police are investigating this video taken right before 7 a.m. that shows a man 30 blocks north of the murder scene about 15 minutes after it happened, biking near Central Park, this time with no backpack.
We're on the right path, and we believe we're going to apprehend this person.
Those images showing the person of interest's face could also allow investigators to use facial recognition technology to ID him. At the hostel where they were taken, witnesses in shock. One saying she shared a room with 2 strangers and checked out the day of the murder.
It makes you second guess who you're actually staying in a hostel with.
A senior New York City law enforcement official telling NBC News that before the shooting, the suspect bought 2 protein bars and a water bottle from a nearby Starbucks, and that authorities were able to locate and collect the discarded items, which could contain vital clues.
It could be some sort of physical evidence, a fingerprint, maybe even some sort of DNA that they can trace.
The around-the-clock manhunt continuing to find an elusive killer responsible for one of the most shocking murders in recent New York memory. It's notable that some healthcare companies appear to be making changes as a result of the violence and what happened to Brian Thompson. CVS Health, for example, and Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield have both either edited or changed names and photographs of executive leadership on their website, according to an NBC News Digital analysis. And in fact, CVS has confirmed to us they've removed those photos. We have not yet heard back from Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. Also worth mentioning, Kroll, a top risk management company, telling NBC News that high-level executives and CEOs have been reaching out to them the last couple of days looking for added protection. In Midtown Manhattan, Sam Brock, NBC News. Back to you.
All right, Sam, thanks so much.
For more now, we are joined by NBC News terrorism analyst, retired ATF special agent in charge, Jim Kavanaugh. Jim, good to have you with us. So let's start with these new images of what police are calling a person of interest. Sam mentioned using facial recognition technology to track them down. Talk more about how that works and just what the NYPD is looking for right now with this person.
Well, they can sweep their cameras, the ones they have all over the city and the ones they can get from private sources, and, you know, they can try to match them to other images of people walking on the sidewalk. And then maybe they can put it through to a place where they can ID the person. You know, we haven't talked about the bicycle much, but the police have said it was not a city bike, which is one you rent. And there was, the police reported a battery. He was seen outside the hostel with a bike battery. So there might be a lead on the bike. You know, what kind of make of the bike is it? Could you appeal to the public? Did anybody sell a bike like this in that 10-day period? You know, get a little more public with that effort if they don't know already where the bike came from, because that might present a lead, you know, where someone says, well, yeah, I sold a guy a bike like that. Well, then you can sweep the cameras on that street, that block, you know, near that guy's house, you know, and find out. This guy, obviously, the lead is he came from Atlanta, as Sam reported, on a Greyhound bus 10 days prior. So he doesn't have a car. He came on a bus. He stays at a hostel. He travels by bike and subway. So you're starting to get into his habits. You got a pretty good picture of him. The thing is, Joe, if you know that guy and you see that picture, you'll know who it is. So more widespread on the picture. If I was in command there, I'd probably right now want to up that reward more to get that picture out more, because blasted all over the Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia area, all in that area. You know, up the reward and do that, because somebody there knows him and they could make him from that photograph. But they're going to catch this guy for sure. They got so many great leads here. You know, the silencer and the gun is another lead. They might be able to get something on that. We don't know if they've gotten fingerprints from the expended bullets left at the scene. So there's a lot going on, a lot of leads here.
You mentioned, yeah, he possibly arrived by bus from Atlanta, but on top of that, police looking into whether the shooter used that fake ID and cash to get a hotel room at the hostel. I mean, what does all of this tell you?
Determination, lots of planning. The motive really looks like revenge, and with those messages on the bullets, you know, which is kind of the criticism of the healthcare industry, the way they deny claims, deny, defend, depose. You know, his message is, you know, I'm giving it back to you. I'm giving it back to you what you did to me. And that's his speaking to us. I mean, it's the killer speaking to us. Now, anything could be a red herring, of course, but looking at it just cleanly, it looks to me like that's the killer saying, here's your policy back at you. This is my revenge. And he planned it. He might have had a loved one die. They didn't pay the health care. They lost a fortune on their medical bills, a lot of suffering maybe. And they planned this revenge. I mean, this is really, really reeks of a revenge hit. So, and tried to, you know, be not seen, buses, hoods, face masks, but, you know, an amateur criminal. Lots and lots of leads here. NYPD is going to get this guy for sure.
Jim, what are the odds this person's even in New York City still?
Yeah, I don't think he's in New York City at all, no. I think he was out of there probably the day of the killing. His effort to go to New York City was strictly that investors conference, I would think. He followed it online. He knew he could get access to the CEO there, where he probably couldn't get access to him at his office in Minnesota. But he knew there he could. So he went early and he staked out that street. I would say he was there on that street Monday. To me, it'd be all the camera video of the hotel where the CEO stayed too, because there might be video of this guy there. He might have even been in that investors conference on Tuesday. Or Monday and Tuesday, and in there, wanting to see the CEO, wanting to follow him out on foot, see where he went. There's some pre-operational surveillance here that I think the guy could be found on as well.
All right, Jim Kavanaugh, appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, now to that powerful winter weather storm making its way through the Great Lakes and Northeast. More than 5 feet of snow has already fallen in western Pennsylvania. More is in the forecast for today. NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin is in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is one of the hardest hit areas. She joins us now with the latest on that. Good morning, Erin.
Hey, Christine, good morning. Right now, there's a break in the snow, but there's another clipper system plus more lake effect snow on the way. And already, as you can see, there is an incredible amount of snow on the ground. So much snow, officials say they're running out of places to push it.
This morning, folks in Erie, Pennsylvania are dealing with a fresh blast of blizzard-like weather, adding to the 5 feet of snow that has fallen in the last week. Whiteout conditions and gusty winds across the Great Lakes, stopping people literally in their tracks. While at Lake Erie, waves as high as 15 feet, slamming against the base of Bicentennial Tower. Overnight, up to a foot of fresh lake effect snow is expected to fall across New York State and parts of New England. Officials urging caution after at least 2 died while clearing snow in New York. Even more widespread, the threat of intense wind gusts and frigid cold, with some 35 million Americans under high wind alerts overnight and temperatures along the East Coast plunging as much as 20 degrees below normal, even triggering freeze warnings in Florida and Georgia. The winds so strong, it caused this truck to fold in half.
It's kind of been a crazy week or so.
The onslaught of winter weather so intense, even some first responders needed help. A volunteer firehouse converted into an emergency warming center had to be evacuated as the roof buckled under the weight of the snow.
If the firehouse collapses and we're out a whole bunch of resources.
Neighbors responded with shovels.
How does it make you feel to see the community show up?
It makes you feel great. I mean, my phone has blown up for the last 2 or 3 hours of people that want to come out and help.
In Asheville, North Carolina, where many are still displaced by the destructive hurricane that hit 2 months ago, temperatures dropping to 13 degrees today, with wind chills near 0.
Areas around the Great Lakes could get up to a foot of fresh snow through tonight. But the good news going into the weekend is that the temperatures are expected to warm up a bit, and there's rain in the forecast for next week. Christine?
All right. I hope you have a good pair of boots on, Erin. Thanks so much. All right, more snow is on the way today. Let's get a check on your Morning News Now weather. NBC meteorologist Angie Lastman joins us now. Good morning, Angie.
Good morning, Christine. Always good to see you. We've got, as Erin mentioned, more of that snow on the way, and this is going to cause some trouble for folks that have already received plenty of snow, like where Erin is currently right now. But let's break it all down for you. We've got your satellite and radar pictures so far this morning. You can see it's not a surprise. We've got some of these lake effect snow bands happening downwind of the lakes. That really chilly Arctic air, again, going across those warm lakes. This is what you get. And so this is what we're going to see through the day today. No surprise that there's still winter weather alerts up across this region. We've seen them shrink a bit, but Erie stretching to Punxsutawney, down to Johnstown. We've got Oswego, Watertown, all still included in those, again, because these are the locations that are going to continue to see the potential for some really, impressive additional amounts of snow from now through the next 24 hours or so. Here's how it plays out through the day today. Here's a look at 8 p.m. on Friday. You can see those snow bands still going. It's the heavy snow that you're going to have to to deal with downwind of Erie and Ontario. A lot of that still happening across parts of the Great Lakes as well. And then here comes this next clipper system. That arrives for parts of the Northeast, especially the interior portions of New England, as we get into the late parts of your day tomorrow. The Great Lakes, you'll see that a little earlier. We'll have some warmer air trying to mix in. So notice there's a bit of rain involved in that as well across places like Michigan. But for the most part, it's going to be the snow and the steady kind of lighter snow expected across the Northeast. But still, additional snow nonetheless. And you guessed it, downwind of the lake is where we'll see those highest amounts possible. So maybe a foot, maybe up to 2 feet by the time we get all said and done in some of those isolated areas. A more widespread kind of range, about 1 inch to 3 inches, maybe up to 6 inches for some folks. But again, downwind of the lakes is where we're expecting the most impressive amounts of snow between now and the end of our weekend. Big picture look at those really frigid temperatures across the Southeast. We've had chilly alerts this morning for that cold air that's been in place. Folks in Tallahassee waking up to 41 but feeling like 35. It's in Atlanta right now feeling like 17. We've got the teens on tap for Nashville, Little Rock into the teens as well, and just 11 degrees for what it feels like in Tupelo this morning. Now, we'll see a gradual kind of warm up over the next couple of days, but this afternoon, temperatures aren't all that much warmer than where they are currently right now. So Little Rock into the 40s, along with Raleigh. We've got Tallahassee at 55 degrees. I know my Florida people, that means they're going to be bundled up, just like we will be in, say, Boston with a high of 32 today. So the extra layers needed across the east. A lot less folks going to need those here as we get into tomorrow, but still 30s for Cleveland and Philadelphia. Charlotte, you'll top out at around 50 degrees. Those temperatures closer to where we should be. But here comes the temperature swing, because by early next week, notice how we go from the low 60s in Richmond on Sunday into the upper 60s by Tuesday, Christine, and then the 50s on tap, too, for New York City. So some milder, more spring-like air expected, but I'm not expecting that to last all that long. So enjoy it while we can.
Yeah, and confusing all of our plants and all of our gardens.
And our outfits.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Angie. Nice to see you. In California, Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a state of emergency following a magnitude 7 earthquake in the northern part of the state, right near the Oregon border. This morning, residents are recovering after being shaken up by tremors that were felt as far away as San Francisco. The huge quake also prompted a brief tsunami warning in the area, as well as parts of Oregon. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz joins us now from Ferndale, California, with the latest. Liz, good morning.
Hey, Christine, good morning to you. Yeah, definitely an unsettling day for a lot of us here in California. And, folks in this community here in Humboldt County are just thankful that it wasn't worse. But the owner of this store in downtown Ferndale says in just 10 seconds, the quake made cost him thousands of dollars in damage from bottles, food, and other items falling off the shelves.
This morning, the cleanup is underway after a 7.0 earthquake jolted Northern California. The large trembler, which struck just before 11 Thursday morning off the coast of Humboldt County, prompting a brief tsunami warning for hundreds of miles of coastline from California's Bay Area to southern Oregon.
It's just like a warning, but it's still scary getting that notification.
Cities including Berkeley, Half Moon Bay, and Crescent City issuing immediate evacuation orders. This man heading to high ground from his home in Stinson Beach.
The probability is low, but I have no reason to take a risk of dealing with a big tsunami.
Within a few hours, the warnings lifted, but experts say it was a necessary precaution.
The fault is moving the seafloor, and if it moves vertically and displaces a lot of water, it can generate a tsunami.
The quake's motion turned out to be mostly horizontal, so it didn't move much water and didn't cause any significant damage or injuries. But those closest to the epicenter in Humboldt County had some cleaning up to do, with bottles and other items flying off shelves at this grocery store in Garberville and at this historic hotel in Ferndale, a door shaken off its hinges. Across the state in Chico, the quake making waves in this swimming pool.
This is a big one, guys.
Governor Gavin Newsom declaring a state of emergency for the area.
It's another reminder of the state that we live in and the state of mind that we need to bring to our day-to-day reality here in the state of California in terms of being prepared for earthquakes.
The quake comes nearly 2 years to the day after a 6.4 struck the same area in Humboldt County. 2 died and several buildings were damaged in that one. This time, many here thankful it wasn't worse.
Everybody I talked to, they were shaken up but not hurt.
It's a tight-knit community, so everybody's helping each other pick up and clean up, and on we go.
And here in Humboldt County, there have been reports of some power outages, some water main breaks, and a couple homes knocked off their foundation. There's also been a lot of aftershocks. I felt one last night, some 60 reported so far. They've all been pretty minor and small, though. Really, though, experts say that this part of California, where 3 tectonic plates meet, has more magnitude 7 quakes than anywhere else in the state. Christine?
All right, Liz, thank you so much for that. Now to the latest on the Trump transition. The president-elect's defense secretary pick, Pete Hegseth, is keeping his hat in the ring despite failing to secure support from at least a handful of Republican senators. That's according to a Trump transition official who spoke with NBC News. Our chief White House correspondent, Peter Alexander, has more on what comes next.
Overnight, President-elect Trump on New York's Long Island accepting Fox News' annual Patriot of the Year award.
We have to win, and we have to bring our country back.
It comes as Pentagon pick Pete Hegseth is fighting to salvage his defense secretary nomination, wrapping up a week of meetings with Senate Republicans.
I'm here with the support of President Donald Trump.
Still, Hegseth has yet to erase questions about his alleged drunken behavior and a 2017 sexual assault allegation, both of which he denies. No charges were ever filed in the assault case, which police investigated. But some Republicans, like Iowa's Joni Ernst, a sexual violence survivor, say they remain undecided.
I think for a number of our senators, they want to make sure that any allegations have been cleared.
And another of the president-elect's picks, Tulsi Gabbard, up for Director of National Intelligence, is also drawing new scrutiny on Capitol Hill. NBC News obtaining this letter from nearly 100 former diplomats, national security, and intelligence officials saying they're alarmed by the selection, urging Senate leaders to hold closed-door hearings on her nomination that would allow them to review all information available to the U.S. government about Gabbard. Making their debut together on the Hill, billionaires Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who Trump has tasked with finding ways to slash federal spending. The two visiting lawmakers who would have to approve any suggested cuts.
Elon and Vivek talked about having a naughty list and a nice list for members of Congress and senators.
Also on the Hill, new tensions with acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe testifying about the 2 Trump assassination attempts. The hearing erupting into a shouting match when a Republican congressman pressed Rowe about this scene where he stood behind Vice President Harris during this year's 9/11 ceremony at Ground Zero.
I actually responded to Ground Zero. I was there going through the ashes of the World Trade Center. I was there at Fresh Kills.
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you, Congressman, were you the special agent in charge?
To show respect for a Secret Service member that died on 9/11.
All right, Peter, thanks so much. This weekend, Mr. Trump plans to make his first trip overseas since the election, attending the reopening celebration for Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Welcome back. Tomorrow, France's iconic Notre Dame Cathedral is finally set to reopen its doors after that devastating fire destroyed parts of the famous building back in 2019. Following years of painstaking restoration, nearly $1 billion in donations, visitors will once again be able to wander through its hallowed halls. Today's show co-anchor Craig Melvin was in Paris when the tragedy happened and has this report.
For Our Lady of Paris, a stunning rebirth. The famous cathedral rising from the ashes of that tragic fire. This morning, the final touches being put in place at Notre Dame. Just released overnight, a fresh glimpse of its beautifully restored interiors, its much-missed vaulted ceiling, and stained glass windows. The more than 860-year-old Gothic cathedral ready to open its doors to the world. Back in April 2019, a shocking spectacle. Flames racing through the cathedral's roof, the iconic spire collapsing in a fiery tangle. We were here in the immediate aftermath.
Meanwhile, this morning, the fire is thankfully finally out as investigators continue to search for a cause.
Now, after 5 years of delicate and labor-intensive restorations, anticipation is growing to see the new Notre Dame.
You seem pretty excited.
I'm very excited.
Canadian Emily McKinnon is such a huge fan. She's got a series of Notre Dame tattoos.
You are the biggest fan of Notre Dame I have probably ever met.
Well, thank you. That is the highest compliment to get.
About 2,000 artisans helped rebuild the landmark. Among them, carpenter Hank Silver of Massachusetts, one of 40 Americans that took part in the Herculean effort. crafting and carving the magnificent new wood ceiling, but using medieval tools and methods.
Being on site and seeing all the different groups of craftspeople gathered together, working together for the same goal, that was really an incredible thing to see. People don't build Gothic cathedrals really anymore.
The massive restoration made possible by nearly $1 billion in donations. Michelle Picot led the fundraising drive with French-American Stéphane Lecam, who lives in Los Angeles. They say donations, big and small, started pouring in even as the cathedral was still burning.
We reached 400 donations an hour.
Americans donating more than $57 million, second only to France.
I feel proud as a U.S. citizen.
Why do you think there were so many Americans who were willing to pony up so much, so quickly?
I think there is a strong bond between the U.S. and France.
The cathedral's magnificence cherished around the world.
And then it became a universal monument, you know, to Paris and to the rest of the world.
And it transcends faith. It's people who aren't even Christian. They come to Paris and they have to stop at Notre Dame.
Last Friday, French President Emmanuel Macron visiting ahead of the weekend's reopening. The vast roof installed, priceless artwork brought back to life. This Saturday, the church's bells will ring across Paris once again for the first time since that fire silenced them, signaling this beloved icon is open once more.
Our thanks to Craig for that report. First Lady Jill Biden, President-elect Donald Trump, and the UK's Prince William are expected to be among the foreign dignitaries present for the cathedral's grand reopening. Also in France, the fallout growing over this week's no-confidence vote against the country's prime minister. NBC correspondent Karen Gilchrist joins us now. Good morning, Karen.
Hey there, Christine. Good morning. Yes, French President Emmanuel Macron has said that he will name a new prime minister in the coming days. That's after Michel Barnier stood down following a no-confidence vote in Parliament on Wednesday. Speaking to the nation Thursday, Macron rejected pressure to himself stand down, but said that he would hold talks today with the Socialist Party to agree a short-term deal. But finding a minister who can unite France's highly divided parliament is unlikely to prove a straightforward task. Elsewhere, in Canada, the government said Thursday that it was banning more than 300 firearm varieties, suggesting that the guns belong only on the battlefield. In fact, Ottawa said that it is exploring how the guns might be sent to Ukraine to support its defense against Russia. And this comes as part of a wider crackdown on firearms in Canada, with the country banning more than 2,000 models since 2020. And feel like clocking off early this week? Well, workers in Tokyo, Japan are being encouraged to adopt a 4-day working week. That's a radical new policy set to come into effect next year, part of the government's push to help working parents and boost the country's dwindling birth rate. Japan has one of the lowest fertility rates in the world, hitting another record low this year. But it's actually a hard sell for a country known for its hard-working culture. I don't know about you, Christine, but I'm happy to give it a go. Back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Karen, thank you so much. Coming up, a fresh snapshot of America's economy this morning. After the break, what November's critical jobs report says about the labor market as we head into 2025. That's next. Stay with us. And we're back with an underwater journey to preserve the environment. In California, kelp forests are disappearing due to an invasion of purple sea urchins. But research shows that all hope may not be lost thanks to the state's sea otters. NBC News Now anchor Gadi Schwartz visited the Monterey Bay Aquarium to find out more.
On a morning like this, it is hard to remember that there is an ecological disaster that's happening off the coast of California. In order to show you how bad it's gotten, we're going to take you underneath down here to show you how good it's supposed to be. But before we could get in the water, just over there, family of sea otters, we were surrounded by visitors. This area is teeming with life. Once the coast was clear, we geared up and descended into one of the most protected natural kelp forests on the West Coast.
It feels so much like we're on a different planet. It's like being in a forest on land.
Dr. Josh Smith has been studying this fragile ecosystem for years.
Everywhere we look, fish. So much majestic down here.
The kelp can grow up to 100 feet tall.
Look at how tall this kelp is.
And suddenly, we were making new friends.
Absolutely incredible. Just incredible.
But here, the real stars of the ecosystem are the elusive sea otters. A recent study by the Monterey Bay Aquarium reviewing historical records found that those otters have been a cornerstone to protecting the environment. And in the Central Coast, they've been working overtime to try to protect the kelp forests from an invasion of purple sea urchins brought on by warming waters and a die-off of sea stars.
Sea otters are really important predators in the ecosystem.
They're like the game wardens of the forest.
Yeah, they do tend to keep sea urchin populations under control.
But those sea urchin feasting otters are in danger. We went under in a different spot to see just how much damage those purple urchins were causing.
It looks like we're in a desert, and you've got these purple polka dots all across the seafloor here. That's right. The reef is covered with purple sea urchins. They're these baseball-sized, tiny animals that like to eat kelp. But there's no kelp here. They've eaten it all.
The crisis reaching a boiling point 10 years ago when a major marine heat wave ravaged the kelp.
And they completely transformed the reef surface here to what we call a sea urchin barren.
It's kind of depressing to see the barren like that. How much of the kelp here in California has been lost?
Right here in Monterey Bay, we've lost about 70% or so of kelp forests.
At Monterey Bay Aquarium,
hi, otters.
They've been researching ways to tackle the problem for years, even taking us along on sea otter rehabilitation missions.
All right.
For now, preserved behind glass and protected in the bay, as biologists continue to search for solutions in the sea. Gotti Schwartz, NBC News, Monterey, California.
Now for what's making financial headlines. OpenAI is introducing a subscription plan for ChatGPT. CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us now with more on that and other money news. Good morning, Silvana.
Hey, Christine, good morning to you. Happy Friday. Yeah, so OpenAI is launching a subscription version of ChatGPT for $200 a month, and that's aimed at engineering fields and use in research. Now, ChatGPT Pro is in addition to existing subscription plans for ChatGPT Plus, Team, and Enterprise, as OpenAI looks to expand industry applications for the technology. Pro will provide access to the most advanced AI tools, including unlimited access to the firm's new reasoning model called O1. Meanwhile, Uber is getting into the holiday spirit. It will now deliver a fresh-cut Christmas tree and even a group of carolers to your front door. Uber has offered limited tree delivery off and on since 2015, usually through a partnership with local vendors, but it's being expanded nationwide through Uber Eats. The carolers are only available to customers in New York City, Los Angeles, Miami, and Washington, D.C., and they'll also bring a boozy gift in partnership with Diageo. And it's now possible to smell like the champagne of beers. Miller High Life launching Dive Bar Fume. It's a perfume that captures all the aromas of your neighborhood dive bar, and those include cedarwood and patchouli, inspired by the wood of the bar top, tobacco and leather, and champaca blossom. That's a flowery scent, Miller says, remind you of a bartender cracking open a bottle. Fans can get their hands on a bottle during a limited drop at noon Eastern every day for $60 while supplies last at shop.millerhighlife.com, Christine.
It smells like the bar, or it smells like the hangover the next day? What exactly does it smell like?
Yikes. I don't know. It sounds like maybe a combination of both.
I like it. Interesting. Okay, good marketing. Silvana, thank you so much. All right, we've got some breaking economic data to bring you this morning. The U.S. economy added 227,000 jobs in November, more than expected. The jobless rate, 4.2%. Investopedia's editor-in-chief Caleb Silver joins us now to talk more about this. This is the Super Bowl report for many people who cover the economy and watch what's really happening in the market. And the job, of course, is the cornerstone of most people's personal economy. This shows the labor market picked up speed again after those hurricanes and strikes slowed it down the month before.
Big rebound here, obviously, from October when we did have the weather issues. We had a strike at Boeing. We had other issues going on, and they revised October's numbers a little bit higher. But this shows stability in the labor market, 227,000 jobs ads. You see that little spike in unemployment?
Yeah.
That's more people potentially looking for work, the way the Labor Department calls up homes and says, are you actually looking for work? Anybody in your home? Little spike there. I wouldn't make too much of it. But the earnings is key, right? We keep earning more month after month, 4% year over year, way outpacing inflation. So the labor market looks relatively strong, not a lot of jobs turnover. And this figure you and I both love, the labor force participation rate, 62.5%. Most people are working right now, and not that many people are long-term unemployed.
Let's put this 227,000 like in a longer context, if we can show what's been happening over the past year, because there was concern that these numbers were way too strong. I mean, it sounds counterintuitive, but the job market was too strong. Is it normalizing a bit here?
Yeah, we're still averaging around 200,000 jobs a month if you take it back 12 to 14 months, and that's a pretty good, healthy clip of hiring in this country, and you don't see a lot of turnover in jobs right now either. So we're in a good place. Is it too hot? Are we in the Goldilocks part of the economy? We still have inflation that's relatively hot, on its way down, but we also have this job market that's still pretty hot. So the economy's strong from those two headline perspectives.
Yeah, we heard Jay Powell, the Fed chief, say this week to Andrew Ross Sorkin at the Deal Book Summit. He basically said, we're in a good place in the economy. But the question is, this is the last big jobs report before the Fed meets next. Does this strong wage number, the strong job market, the strong economy mean the Fed should be careful about cutting interest rates again?
Yeah, well, Fed Chair Powell has been tiptoeing around whether or not the Fed will actually cut rates another 0.25% when it meets in 13 days, 5 hours and 22 minutes. I'm not counting. You're counting. But if you look at the percentages, it looks like a 68% chance that it will. This will be the last Fed meeting, too, before the inauguration. So all of this is coming together at the same time into the funnel right now. But the economy, from a headline perspective, super healthy. And we have a stock market at record highs. That produces the wealth effect. We have household income at a pretty much of a 12-month high. That produces the wealth effect either. So people are spending, and they can get a job if they need it.
So what about the inflation story? Because I saw Fitch, the credit agency, yesterday put out this note saying U.S. inflation risks are actually rising. Consumer spending is still super strong. Tariffs are likely to raise prices, President Trump's tariffs, and an immigration slowdown, again, likely to raise prices. What's the inflation story like for American households?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's going to be slowing down much. If you put all those things together into the blender, what do you get? You get the prospect for higher inflation, which is why Fitch is saying this story is not over yet. We're at around 2.6, 2.8% inflation, depending on which report you're looking at. That's a little hotter than the Fed likes it to be, but at the same time, retail consumers are still spending. You can still get a job if you want, and profits in the stock market continue to grow. So we have hot inflation, we have a hot labor market, but it's not slowing the overall economy down.
What an amazing moment. I mean, I don't think anybody thought we'd be here 2 years after. It's crazy. Okay, nice to see you, Caleb Silver, my friend. All right, coming up, a red-nosed return after the break. Joe takes a look back at 60 years of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer landing back on NBC tonight. That's next on Morning News Now.
We're back now with everyone's favorite reindeer. Rudolph debuted on NBC on this very day, December 6, back in 1964, 60 years ago. It has not been on our airwaves for more than half a century, but tonight the beloved holiday classic returns to the network. It's the kind of event that 3, maybe even 4 generations of a family can watch together.
After 60 years, Rudolph's light,
I think you're cute,
just can't be dimmed.
I'm cute!
The story of the megawatt misfit is as treasured as ever.
I saw Rudolph for the first time when I was 6 years old, and I've loved him ever since.
When Christmas Day is here, the most wonderful day of the year.
The catchy songs peppered throughout the 50-minute special are iconic, not to mention Rudolph's sidekicks, Hermie the Elf.
I just don't like to make toys.
And Yukon Cornelius, the pickaxe-wielding and licking prospector.
Nothing.
Cherished characters voiced long ago by actors like Corinne Conley, who's now 95 years old.
We had no idea that we would be seeing this
for 60 years afterward.
She was Rudolph's mother.
He's got a shiny nose.
Even to this day, when people hear that you voiced Rudolph's mother, what's the reaction?
Oh, I've brought people to tears.
What does it mean to you to know that people have such a strong response when they hear that you were Rudolph's mother?
Well, it's nice to have been involved in something that affects people so warmly.
Warmly, even on ice. At the Gaylord Texan Resort near Dallas, intricate ice carvings made from 6,000 blocks of ice bring Rudolph's story to life.
I love Rudolph because he's a sweet reindeer and his nose glows.
7-year-old Knox Sanchez is here with his mom, dad, and grandma.
He's glowing like the sky.
3 generations joining in the reindeer games.
Just carrying on the tradition of Rudolph is just phenomenal.
It's certainly a family affair for the Cowan family. Bernard Cowan was the voice of the abominable snow monster Bumble, a villain who back in the day sparked much conversation in the classroom of Bernard's son, Elliot.
Inevitably, one child would say, yes, but I was so scared of Bumble. And I would stand up and say, oh, don't worry about it. He's all right. I just had breakfast with him.
Though his father passed away more than 30 years ago, Elliot can share Rudolph with his grandkids today. A connection forever.
Their eyes light up. They can walk into a store and see a Bumble toy, and she can say, that's my great-grandfather.
By today's standards, Rudolph's stop-motion technology might seem archaic, but the lessons, kindness and acceptance, are timeless.
Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight?
A light that will never burn out.
Up, and away!
And you can watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern on NBC.
All right, coming up, if it's Friday, that can only mean one thing. Your weekly can't miss list is right around the corner. It's the latest and greatest from the world of entertainment that you can cozy up to this weekend. Grab your popcorn, folks. We've got your showtimes next. Finally, this hour, it's Friday. That means it's time for your can't miss list with all of the films and shows that you need to see this weekend. And here to help us sort through it all is entertainment journalist and pop culture expert Brian Balthazar. Good morning. Good morning. Nice to see you. Okay, let's talk about The Order, starring Jude Law. What do we need to know about this one?
Right. This is a true crime thriller, and Jude Law, as you've really never seen him before, and some are saying it's one of the best roles he's ever had, about a series of bank robberies and armored car heists. This is based on a true story in the Pacific Northwest, and he's on to something that's bigger than what everyone else thinks. He thinks it's related to a white supremacist terror group. And he's right, but it's still, and even though you know that, and often you know these stories, you know, how they're going to end, it's still edge-of-your-seat thrilling and exciting to watch. So I think people are going to really love this one.
This next one's so interesting. Y2K, a couple of decades reaching into the the archives here, but it's inspired by real events. What is this one?
Can we call it a period piece yet?
Yeah.
It takes place in 1999. Remember when we were concerned about the Y2K glitch, right?
Yes.
So this takes place, it looks like it's going to be one of those teen kind of teenage party movies, but they're all kind of, it's 1999 New Year's Eve, and then the glitch is not the computer glitch, it's just more horrific and scary, violent horror style glitching that happens. And so it's by A24, who is known for their horror movies. It's kind of getting mixed reviews. It's horror comedy, which is a really tough line to walk. You know?
It's cool to watch. I mean, they seem to have captured the moment in terms of the look of 1999.
I like watching things at that time just for that reason alone.
Now the 90s is so retro.
Right.
Now there's another movie here with a really interesting title.
Right.
And apparently Amy Adams is really stealing the show. What's this one?
Yes, exactly. I'm only going to say it once.
I'm not going to say it. Everybody close your ears if you have little children at the breakfast table.
It's called Night Bitch. And referring to female dog, right? Okay, so the thing is, this is based on a very popular book, and Amy Adams is a woman who's kind of has a kid and decides that she's going to be a stay-at-home mom, somewhat reluctantly because she loves her passion for her work, but over the course of time, she starts to feel more of a, less of a maternal instinct and more of a feral instinct. She starts to become a dog. I'm not giving that away because it's in the trailer. And interestingly, the trailer, some are saying that the trailer comes across as too comedic, when in fact, it's a somewhat dark, story and that she is amazing in it. She transcends the actual movie in some ways, and that there could be some Oscar buzz for her. And people loved this book. And there's a lot of deeper meaning in the struggle that she's having in being a stay-at-home mom who wants to have a career, and this kind of becoming a dog seat. And she apparently and it was adapted for the screen for her by the author.
Interesting. She's an amazing actress.
She is.
Maybe this is her vehicle.
Yeah.
If you're staying in this weekend, there's a new crime series that doesn't get stuck on the details.
Right.
Sticky, it's called.
Right. Sticky is great. So this is based on the true story of a heist in Canada of 3,000 gallons of maple syrup.
Okay.
And, I mean, how can you not love that story?
I'm
sorry, 3,000 tons, not gallons, tons. And this is the kind of story where, you kind of root for the person stealing the syrup, like whoever has the guts to do it. This actually stars a woman that you may not know by name, Margot Martindale, but you've seen her in a million things, and she's fantastic. This is on Prime Video, and Jamie Lee Curtis is also in there. I love anything with Jamie Lee Curtis in it, for the record, so that's a great one you should watch on Prime.
I love anything with Keira Knightley, too, and there's this new adaptation of a spy series, Black Doves, I think it's called. Apparently Amazon has already ordered season 2.
Already into it that much, yes. Okay, so Keira Knightley is married to the UK defense minister, but also on the sly has been secretly working for a spy organization, capturing and distributing secrets. The group is called Black Doves. Something happens in her life to someone she cares about. I don't like to give away too much. I'd like you to be a little bit surprised. Something happens that turns her life upside down, and she's going to get to the bottom of this incident. But I think you need to watch it to find out. But knowing that there's already a second season, some great performances in there, it's going to be a worth
I mean,
watch.
just the trailer looks exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally, if you remember the Snoop Dogg's fatherhood reality series, from that was the mid-2000s, right? There's an update, limited series, streaming on Peacock. What do we need to know?
Okay, so Snoop's kids have all grown up, one of them being Corey Broaddus. That's Snoop's daughter. She is engaged. Her and her fiancé, Wayne Deuce, are planning their wedding, and there's a lot of things that happen in the planning stages and couples counseling leading up to it. Of course, you just get that signature Snoop charm that makes everything watchable. I think it's only about 3 episodes, but it's worth watching because if you love Snoop, if you didn't love Snoop already, you fell in love with him during the Olympics, right? And seeing him interact with his family and the fun kind of just if you love that reality docudrama stuff, this is one to watch on Peacock.
I met him recently in the Today Show green room, and I've got to tell you, I was so starstruck, and he could not be the nice. He was like he knew me my whole life. So nice, so wonderful.
Right.
So really a great guy. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Brian, another really great guy.
Thanks
for coming by.
Great
Have a great weekend.
Thanks very much.
All right, that does it for this hour of Morning News Now. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.